George in Texas. Aloha, George. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, December 28th, 2011. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. Phone lines are open, 877-342-6673, 877-342-6673. Brett's in the control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. And if I sound a little kind of down today, it's because the news is generally kind of bad. And starting off with the fact that earlier today, CNN, first of all, confirmed the story that the counting of the Iowa caucus has been moved to a secret location, away from the eyes of anybody who could check to make sure that it's accurate. Now, yesterday we put the story up there, and we included on our website contact information for the GOP leadership in Iowa, who this morning were announcing that no, it's a false story. We're not moving the counting location at all. It's all going to be transparent the way it should be. And then, of course, later in the day, CNN reports the same story about moving the caucus count to an undisclosed location. So it really is going on, and the GOP leadership in Iowa is lying to everybody who calls in to complain about it. Then CNN went on to report the stunning reversal as Mitt Romney suddenly pulls into a huge lead over everybody else. And just looking at the corporate media today, they've been, it's all Romney all the time. Interviews, he's great, he's this, he's that. And as you heard on the news break, all the GOPers just, leaping on Ron Paul. His foreign policy is a disaster. We've got to go on killing everybody around the planet in order to keep ourselves safe. Which basically fits the pattern of clinical paranoia, I should point out there. But it's getting to look, and, it gives me no pleasure to say this, but, yeah, I was absolutely right. They're getting ready to steal Iowa from Ron Paul. They're going to give it to Mitt Romney because Gingrich has already destroyed his own credibility by not even qualifying for the ballot in Virginia. So they're back to shoving Mitt Romney at us. And that basically means, when we finally get to the election next year, we will have our choice of which genocidal megalomaniac tyrant gets to push the red button on the nuclear missiles. So the TV media has been out there and proclaiming that Mitt Romney is way in the lead. There's no question he's going to win. The newspapers still don't agree. The latest New York Times projection shows Ron Paul with a 60% chance of winning. So more and more, it looks like we are living in a dictatorship. The vote fraud is epidemic. The media exists to propagandize you, and it's it is a little upsetting. Again, I sort of kind of knew this is where it was heading, but to actually see it in front of me on the TV has been a little bit upsetting all day long. Now, Jeff Rense put up an article on his website where the Iowa caucus back in 2004 was counted by a company, or counted by a man whose company is owned by an Israeli defense firm. So not only are we dealing with the fact that the counting is going to take place out of watchful eyes to protect the honesty, but, Israel's involved, possibly. If it's the same people counting next week as 2004, then Israel's got their mitts on this whole thing. Now, there is a very, very, very good reason not to riot when Ron Paul has Iowa stolen from him. And as soon as I can think of it, I'll get back to you. Even Newsweek is out there saying there's going to be violence. The public anger will not be deflected. Occupy Wall Street is going to grow until they reach the point where they understand peaceful revolution isn't possible in this country any longer. And that's when buildings will be burned, banks mostly, TV stations, newspapers, all of the obvious components of the machine. And for Newsweek to be out there saying there's going to be violence unless Wall Street backs off this fascist dictatorship stuff, that's significant. I mean, we've been saying the possibility of revolution exists for years now. But for Newsweek to say it, you got to start taking that stuff seriously here. Meanwhile, over looking at Google Trends, Ron Paul still leads all the searches, 2 to 3 times higher than any other candidate. On the online world, Ron Paul is it. I think he's it in the real world, but we live in a world where the bankers and the corporate media have just said, we get to pick the candidates. Yes, you're still allowed to vote, but you're only allowed to vote for the people we pre-approve. Now, a new wrinkle's been thrown into the formula. If you've noticed, all of a sudden there seem to be a lot of puff pieces about Condoleezza Rice on TV. There's a reason for that. She's being floated as the vice presidential candidate for whoever wins the GOP nomination this next year. And the reason is she's a woman and she's black. And having a black vice president candidate will undermine Obama's ability to use race as an issue in the campaign. And having a woman as vice president is going to negate the fact that Obama is rumored to be considering Hillary Clinton as his vice president next year, which is going to make the Secret Service very, very, very nervous, trying to keep Obama alive if she's the vice president and he wins a second term. But they're floating Condoleezza Rice because they need a black person and they need a woman, and she is both. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Pat in Florida. Aloha, Pat. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello. Mike. I was thinking that we should forget about Ron Paul because after he gets elected, he's going to get assassinated, and then we're going to have to deal with the vice president. And who's the vice president going to be that's going to run the country after Ron Paul's assassinated?
Well, I think at the point where Ron Paul gets assassinated, either before or after the election is when the revolution should start. So the vice president is a moot point. Hello?
Well, I was thinking, because everyone loves Ron Paul, but, who's the backup guy who's going to be...
You're not listening to me.
Ron Paul.
I think it could even start in Iowa. If they steal Iowa from Ron Paul, we might see rioting up there. Because this is sending home the message to the American people. There is no way to work within the system. You are shut out from it. You will not get to run your candidates. You get to pick which one of the candidates are pre-approved by Israel and Wall Street. Remember what John F. Kennedy used to say. When peaceful revolution becomes impossible, violent revolution becomes inevitable. If Ron Paul is assassinated the way Bobby Kennedy was, then it's obvious peaceful revolution is impossible. So it doesn't really matter who the vice president candidate is at that point. Even Newsweek is saying we're on the verge of mass violence across the country. We better start dealing with that. I don't like it. I've worked for the last 18 years to prevent this very situation. I have utterly failed the primary mission of WhatReallyHappened.com, which was to avoid a world war and a violent rebellion in the United States of America. And I'm dealing with issues of having utterly failed because we're on the verge of both. Because the money junkies and these hallucinated fanatics who are listening to the invisible man in the clouds that nobody else can see or hear are getting ready to blow up the entire place in his infinite mercy. Okay, so it doesn't really matter what Ron Paul's vice presidential candidate is going to be. If they steal it from him, if they shoot him, the game is over. There's no reason to go on pretending the system can be worked with. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot. We'll let you go.
All right.
Here.
Thanks, Mike.
Have a good one. There comes a point where you have to say we cannot work within the system any longer. Claire Wolfe had this book out, 101 Things to Do While Waiting for the Revolution. It was kind of semi-humorous, but there was a wonderful quote in there where she said, Americans are at that awkward stage in our history. It's too late to try and work within the system, but it's too soon to shoot the bastards. Then she came out a few years ago and said, I was wrong. It's time to shoot the bastards. And I wish it was otherwise. But it's time to make that decision. Are you going to spend the rest of your life working yourself to death and having your work product taken away from you and given to Israel or Wall Street or the war machine while your quality of life continues to decline and there's no medical care and there's no social support? Are you going to continue living like that? Or is it time to basically stand up and say it's time to fire this government? We've done it before. We did it back in 1776, and for very many of the same reasons we should be doing it right now. So if Iowa is stolen from Ron Paul, or if he wins Iowa and is then assassinated the way Bobby Kennedy was, I, for one, do not intend to go on pretending that there's any way to work within the system. It is broken. We, the people, are shut out of our own government. It's a private little boys' club.